My name is Sarah Mitchell and I'm 28 years old now. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how I lost my family at 13 and found a real one in the most unexpected place. This isn't a story about forgiveness or reconciliation. It's about justice, consequences, and the difference between people who call themselves parents and those who actually earn that title. Before I tell you what happened at that graduation ceremony, when my biological mother sat frozen in her seat while 847 people watched me honor the woman who truly raised me, I need to take you back to where it all began. It started at St. Mary's Hospital Room 314 on a Tuesday afternoon in October when I was just 13 years old. I remember the smell of that room perfectly, sharp antiseptic mixed with a faint floral scent from the air freshener. I was sitting on the examination table, my legs dangling because I was still small for my age, wearing one of those paper gowns that never quite closed in the back. Dr. Patterson had just finished explaining my diagnosis to my parents, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He called it the most common type of childhood cancer but also one of the most treatable. With aggressive chemotherapy, he said my survival rate was around 85 to 90%. Good odds, he kept repeating. Really good odds. My mother Linda sat in a plastic chair by the window staring at a single spot on the wall. My father Robert stood with his arms crossed, his face growing redder by the minute. My older sister Jessica, 16 at the time, was texting on her phone, barely paying attention. Dr. Patterson continued pulling up charts on his tablet, explaining that the treatment would be intensive. There would be 2 to 3 years of chemotherapy. The first phase, induction therapy, would last about a month and I'd need to be hospitalized for most of it. After that would come consolidation and maintenance, mostly outpatient but with frequent hospital visits. How much? My father asked. That was the first thing he said, not whether I'd be okay, not what they could do to help. Just how much? Dr. Patterson cleared his throat and explained that with our insurance my parents would be responsible for roughly 20% of the total cost. Over the full course of treatment, that could mean anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 out of pocket. He mentioned financial assistance programs and payment plans. My father laughed sharp and cold. You're telling me we have to pay $100,000 because she got sick? Robert, my mother said quietly, but she still didn't look at me. She hadn't looked at me once since the diagnosis. Dr. Patterson tried to steady the room, saying he understood how overwhelming it was but that my prognosis was excellent. With treatment she has every chance of beating this and living a completely normal life, Dr. Patterson said. Jessica is applying to colleges next year, my father replied, as if the doctor hadn't spoken at all. Yale. Princeton. She got a 1520 on her SAT. We've been saving for her education since the day she was born. The room fell into a heavy silence. Dr. Patterson looked from my parents to me, clearly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, my father cut him off. Sarah needs to understand reality. He finally looked at me and there was nothing in his eyes, no fear, no concern, just cold calculation. We have $180,000 in the college fund. That money is for your sister's education, her future. We're not throwing it away on medical bills. Something cracked inside my chest and it had nothing to do with cancer. There are other options, Dr. Patterson said, his voice tight. State programs. Charity care. Medicaid. We're not taking charity, my mother said, suddenly a spark of pride finally animating her face. What would people think? What are you suggesting? Dr. Patterson asked, disbelief seeping into his professional tone. My father stared at me for a long moment. She's 13. She can be emancipated, become a ward of the state. Then she qualifies for full Medicaid coverage and it doesn't touch our finances. At first the words didn't make sense. I kept waiting for him to say he was joking, that he was just stressed and didn't mean it. But he stood there with his arms crossed, his face set with determination. You cannot be serious, Dr. Patterson said. We have another child to think about, my mother replied, her voice defensive now, as if she were the one being wronged. Jessica has a future. She's going to do great things. We can't let, she gestured vaguely in my direction, this destroy everything we've built. Mom, I said, my voice small and trembling. I'm scared. She looked at me and for a moment I thought she might soften. Instead she said, "You'll be fine, Sarah. The doctor said the survival rate is good. You'll get treated. You'll get better. And when you're 18 you can figure out your own life. But we can't sacrifice Jessica's future for this." "I'm your daughter," I whispered. "And so is Jessica," my father snapped. "And she actually has potential. She's going to be a doctor or a lawyer. She's brilliant." He paused, looking me up and down. You've always been average. Average grades. Average everything. We're not destroying a promising future for an average one." If you're connecting with this story, please hit the like button, but only if you genuinely are. I share these experiences to tell real stories, and your support helps me keep going. Dr. Patterson stood up abruptly. "I'm going to ask you to leave my office while I speak with Sarah privately," Dr. Patterson said. "But we're her parents," my mother began. "Leave. Now." His voice had turned cold and unyielding. "Or I will call security and social services." They left. Jessica followed them without even glancing at me, her eyes still glued to her phone. The door clicked shut behind them and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The full weight of what had just happened crashed over me and I started sobbing, deep gasping sobs that shook my entire body. Dr. Patterson pulled his chair closer and waited until I could breathe again. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What your parents just said is not okay. It's not legal and it's not happening. I'm calling social services right now. You are not leaving this hospital without a plan in place that puts you first. Do you understand?" I nodded, wiping my face with the rough hospital tissues. "You have cancer. That's terrifying and it's going to be hard," he continued. "But you're going to beat this and you're going to do it surrounded by people who actually care about you. I promise." He kept that promise. Within an hour a social worker named Margaret was in the room. Within 2 hours I was moved to a pediatric oncology room and officially admitted for treatment. And within 3 hours my parents had signed emergency temporary custody papers, effectively abandoning me to the state. They didn't even say goodbye. That first night in the pediatric oncology ward was the darkest of my life. I lay in the hospital bed, hooked up to and force surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, and I felt more alone than I ever thought possible. I wasn't afraid of the cancer anymore. I was afraid that no one would care whether I lived or died. Then Rachel walked in for the night shift. Rachel Torres was 34 years old, a pediatric oncology nurse who had worked at St. Mary's for 8 years. She had dark curly hair pulled back into a practical ponytail, warm brown eyes, and a smile that actually reached them. She wasn't beautiful in a conventional way, but there was something about her presence that made you feel safe. "Hey, there's Sarah," she said, checking my chart. "I'm Rachel and I'm going to be your night nurse. How are you feeling?" "Terrible," I answered honestly. She pulled up a chair and sat down, giving me her full attention. "Yeah, I heard what happened with your parents. There really aren't words for how messed up that is." I started crying again. That day it felt like crying was all I knew how to do. Rachel didn't tell me to stop or promise that everything would be okay. She just handed me tissues and waited. When I finally calmed down, she said softly, "I'm not going to lie to you, Sarah. The next few years are going to be hard. Cancer treatment is rough. But you know what?" Rachel continued. "You're tougher than cancer. You're tougher than parents who don't deserve you. And you're not alone. I'm going to be here every step of the way." "You don't even know me," I said. "Not yet," she replied with a soft smile. "But I'm going to. And I have a feeling you're pretty remarkable." That night after she finished her rounds, Rachel came back to my room with a deck of cards. We played Go Fish until 2 in the morning and she told me about her life. She was divorced, had no kids of her own, and had always wanted to be a mother, but it just hadn't worked out. She lived in a small house 15 minutes from the hospital, had a cat named Pancake, and was obsessed with murder mystery podcasts. "Why nursing?" I asked at one point. "My little brother had leukemia when I was 18, she said quietly. He beat it. He's 28 now, married with a kid. But I remember what it was like watching him go through treatment. I remember the nurses who made a difference and the ones who were just doing a job. I wanted to be the kind who makes a difference. Did your parents abandon him? The question slipped out before I could stop myself. God, no, she said immediately. My whole family rallied around him. My parents went broke paying for things insurance didn't cover, and they never once complained. That's what parents do, Sarah. Real parents. Over the next month, as I went through induction chemotherapy, Rachel became more than my nurse. She became my advocate, my protector, and my friend. When I was too sick to eat, she sat with me and told stories until the nausea passed. When I lost my hair, she showed me pictures of herself during her own terrible haircut phase in high school until I laughed. When I had nightmares about being alone forever, she held my hand until I fell back asleep. My parents never visited. Not once. My caseworker Margaret told me they had signed full surrender papers, giving up all parental rights. Jessica was busy with SAT prep and college applications. I was truly on my own, or at least I thought I was, because Rachel was there. On day 28 of my hospital stay, when the induction phase was complete and I was officially in remission, Dr. Patterson came in with good news. You're responding beautifully to treatment, Sarah. We can move to outpatient care now. You'll need to come in regularly for chemotherapy, but you won't have to live here. Where will she go? Rachel asked immediately. She was technically off duty, but she had stayed late as she often did. Foster care, Margaret said. She was there too, always coordinating my placement. I have a family lined up. They're experienced with medical needs. I want to take her, Rachel said. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. I want to foster her, she continued. I'm already approved. I did the training 2 years ago, but I never had a placement. I can do this. I want to do this. Margaret and Dr. Patterson exchanged a look. Rachel, Dr. Patterson said carefully, this is a long-term commitment. 2 more years of intensive treatment, then years of monitoring. I know, Rachel said calmly. I want to do it, if Sarah wants to come home with me. She looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen from an adult in a very long time: hope, love, commitment. Yes, I said. Please. The paperwork took another week. During that time, Rachel brought photos of her house, talked about the room that would be mine, and asked about my favorite paint colors and decorations. She made plans as if I were permanent, not temporary, as if I were her daughter, not just a foster placement. On November 15th, exactly 1 month after my diagnosis, Rachel drove me to her small 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. She carried my single bag of belongings, everything I owned in the world, and led me inside. This is your room, she said, opening a door on the 2nd floor. I stepped inside and froze. The walls were painted a soft lavender, my favorite color, something I had mentioned only once in passing. There was a new bed with a purple comforter, a bookshelf already filled with young adult novels, and a desk by the window. On the desk sat a framed photo of Rachel and me from the hospital, both of us smiling at the camera. Welcome home, Sarah, Rachel said softly. I broke down, crying for what felt like the 100th time that month, but these tears were different. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and hope. Rachel wrapped her arms around me and held me while I cried. You're safe now, she whispered. You're home and I'm not going anywhere. She kept that promise too. The next 2 years were hard. There's no sugarcoating chemotherapy, it's brutal. But Rachel made it bearable. She drove me to every appointment, held my hand through every infusion, and sat with me through every wave of nausea. She learned how to cook all the bland foods I could tolerate during treatment. She bought me soft hats and scarves when I felt self-conscious about my bald head. She helped me keep up with school through a home hospital program. More than anything, she gave me stability, structure, and love. Every morning, even on my worst days, Rachel would come into my room and say, "Good morning, beautiful girl. It's a gift to see your face." Every night, no matter how late her shift ran, she'd come home and check on me, sitting on my bed to hear about my day. On good weeks, we went to the movies or the park. On bad weeks, we camped out on the couch with blankets and watched terrible reality TV. She never once complained about the cost. Insurance covered most of my treatment, but there were still copays, medications, special foods, and supplies. Rachel's house was small and modest, and I later learned she had taken out a second mortgage to cover some of those expenses. She never told me at the time. She just made sure I had everything I needed. 6 months into my treatment, Rachel sat me down at the kitchen table, her expression unusually serious. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important." My heart sank. Was she sending me back into foster care? Had she changed her mind? "I want to adopt you," she said gently. "Permanently. Not just foster care. I want you to be my daughter, my real daughter. Would that be okay with you?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded and cried. Rachel cried too, and we held each other there in the kitchen until Pancake the cat got jealous and demanded attention. The adoption process took another 4 months, but on my 14th birthday I officially became Sarah Torres. Rachel threw a small party with a few of her friends and some kids I'd met through the hospital support group. We ate chocolate cake, I was having a good week and could actually keep food down, and Rachel gave me a necklace with a pendant where our initials were intertwined. "You're mine now," she said, fastening it around my neck. Forever. When I was 15 and finally finished active treatment, entering the maintenance phase with only monthly checkups, Rachel sat me down for another serious talk. "You've missed almost 2 years of normal school," she said. "You're academically behind, and that's not your fault. You were fighting for your life. But I want you to know something, you're brilliant, Sarah. I've watched you tear through books, ask questions that make doctors stop and think, and solve problems in ways that amaze me. You have so much potential, and I'm not going to let cancer or your biological parents' cruelty steal that from you." She enrolled me in an online advanced curriculum and hired a tutor. She stayed up late helping me with homework she barely understood. She celebrated every small victory, every A on a test, every concept I mastered, every goal I reached. "Why are you doing all this?" I asked her one night as she nodded off over my calculus homework at 11 p.m. "You work full-time. You're exhausted. Why push me so hard?" She looked up at me, her eyes fierce. "Because your biological parents told you that you were average, that you had no potential. That your sister's future was worth saving and yours wasn't. I'm going to prove them wrong. We're going to prove them wrong. You're going to do extraordinary things, Sarah Torres, and the whole world is going to know it." By 16 I had caught up to my grade level. By 17 I was ahead, taking college-level courses. Rachel's house was always filled with book study materials, and the smell of coffee as we worked side by side, her with nursing journals, me with AP homework. But it wasn't all academics. Rachel made sure I had a life too. She took me to concerts, museums, and plays. She taught me how to cook and let me make disastrous messes in the kitchen. She introduced me to her friends who became my aunts and uncles. She also made sure I went to therapy to process everything I'd been through. "Healing isn't just physical," she would say. "Your heart needs care too." When I turned 18 and received the 5-year all clear from Dr. Patterson, meaning I was officially in remission with only a minimal chance of relapse, Rachel took me out to our favorite restaurant. Over pasta and breadsticks she pulled out a small box. "I know you're technically an adult now and you don't need me to be your legal guardian anymore," she said, "but I want you to know something. You're my daughter. That's never going to change. Whether you live here or move away, whether you're 18 or 80, you're my kid. Always." Inside the box was a simple silver ring set with both of our birthstones. "To remind you that you're never alone," Rachel said. I wore that ring every single day. During my senior year of high school, Rachel and I began seriously talking about college. My grades were exceptional, a 4.0 GPA, perfect scores on my AP exams, and strong SAT results. During treatment I had discovered a passion for medicine. I wanted to be like Dr. Patterson and Rachel, someone who helps people through their darkest moments. "I want to apply to Johns Hopkins," I told Rachel one evening. "Their pre-med program is one of the best in the country, and their medical school, it's a dream." Johns Hopkins was also incredibly expensive. Even with financial aid it would be a stretch. Rachel didn't hesitate. Then that's where you're applying. We'll figure out the money. You apply to Hopkins and you're going to get in. She was right. In March of my senior year, I received my acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins University along with a substantial scholarship. Between the scholarship grants and federal loans, the cost became manageable. Rachel insisted on covering my living expenses. You focus on school, she said. I've got this. No buts. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to save lives. You're going to be extraordinary. That's worth every penny. I cried when I opened that acceptance letter and Rachel cried right along with me. We had done it. Together we had proven everyone wrong. I spent 4 years at Johns Hopkins working harder than I ever had in my life. Pre-med was brutal, organic chemistry, physics, biology, endless labs, papers, and exams. I called Rachel almost every night, sometimes just to hear her voice, sometimes to cry about a bad grade or a crushing day. You can do this, she told me every single time. You're Sarah Torres. You beat cancer. You can beat anything. During my sophomore year, I came home for Christmas break and noticed Rachel looked tired, thinner. I asked if she was okay, and she waved me off. Just working extra shifts to help with your expenses. I'm fine, honey. Later I learned she'd been working 50 to 60-hour weeks, picking up every extra shift she could so I'd never have to worry about money. She never once asked me to get a job or contribute. She worked herself to exhaustion so I could focus on school. By my junior year I was at the top of my class. By senior year I was applying to medical schools and receiving interviews from prestigious programs. And then Johns Hopkins School of Medicine accepted me. For more years I told Rachel over the phone when I got the acceptance. For more years and I'll be Dr. Torres. I'm so proud of you, I could burst, Rachel said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. Your biological parents have no idea what they gave up. They lost me, I said. But I gained you, she replied. I'd say I got the better deal. Medical school was even more intense than undergrad. The coursework was relentless, the clinical rotations exhausting, the pressure enormous, but I loved it. I loved learning how the human body works, how to diagnose disease, how to help people heal. I chose oncology, wanting to help kids like the one I used to be. Rachel was there for every milestone, my white coat ceremony, my first day of clinical rotations, my residency match day. She was always present, always proud, always supportive. And through all of it, 13 years of school, hundreds of miles between us, countless stressful nights and difficult days, I never heard from my biological parents. Not a single call, email, or text. They had moved on with their lives and I had moved on with mine. Or so I thought. In April of my 4th year of medical school, I received the news that I'd been selected as valedictorian of my graduating class. Out of 120 brilliant students, I had the highest academic standing, the strongest clinical evaluations, and the most impressive research record. I would be giving the student address at commencement. I called Rachel immediately. Mom, I have news. I had started calling her mom during my sophomore year of college. You are my mom, I'd told her. The only one who matters. What's the news, baby? I'm valedictorian. I'm giving the speech at graduation. Rachel screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Then she was crying, laughing, and talking so fast I could barely understand her. I'm so proud of you, she kept saying. So incredibly proud. Your speech is going to be amazing. You're going to change the world, Sarah. I always knew it. Graduation was scheduled for May 20th. Rachel requested the day off months in advance. She bought a new dress. She invited all her friends, my aunts and uncles, the people who had become my family. It was going to be a celebration. 2 weeks before graduation, I received an email from the university's events coordinator. Because of my status as valedictorian, I was allowed to submit additional names for reserved seating beyond the standard 2-guest allocation. I added names immediately, Rachel of course, plus 6 of her closest friends who were family to me. The coordinator replied quickly. We actually have one additional request for your reserved section. Linda and Robert Mitchell have contacted us claiming to be your parents and requesting seats. Should we add them to your list? I stared at the email for a full 5 minutes. Linda and Robert Mitchell, my biological parents. The people who had abandoned me at 13. The ones who told me I was average and not worth saving, who chose my sister's college fund over my life. And now they wanted to attend my graduation. I picked up the phone and called Rachel. Mom, my biological parents want to come to graduation. There was a long pause. How do you feel about that? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. Part of me wants them to see what I became despite them. What do you think I should do? It's your day, honey. Your accomplishment, she said gently. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But if you want my opinion, let them come. Let them see exactly what they threw away. Let them see the woman you became with a real mother by your side. I thought about it for a long time. Then I replied to the email. Yes, please add them to the reserved section. I wanted them there. I wanted them to see. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of final exams, packing up my apartment, and writing my valedictorian speech. I didn't tell Rachel what I was planning to say. I wanted it to be a surprise. May 20th dawned bright and clear. Johns Hopkins commencement was held at Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore with seating for over 10,000 people. Graduates from every school, medicine, nursing, public health, all of Hopkins, were there along with their families. I arrived early for the graduate lineup. My white coat was pressed, my honor cords perfectly arranged. I wore Rachel's necklace with our intertwined initials and the ring she had given me on my 18th birthday. As we organized by school and academic standing, one of the event coordinators approached me. Dr. Torres, he said, they called us doctors even before we officially graduated. Your guests are seated in Section A, Row 3. Is there anything you need? No thank you, I replied. I'm ready. The ceremony began with full pomp and circumstance, literally with the traditional graduation marches. 120 medical students in white coats and caps filed in. The arena was packed, filled with families, professors, and flashing cameras. As I walked past the seating area, I caught a glimpse of my section. Rachel sat in the front row, her face already wet with tears of joy, wearing the new dress she'd bought and clutching a bouquet of flowers. Beside her were her friends, my aunts and uncles, the family I had built. And 2 seats down, sitting stiffly and looking uncomfortable, were Linda and Robert Mitchell. My biological parents. I hadn't seen them in 15 years. My mother looked older, grayer, worn down. My father had gained weight and lost most of his hair. They looked ordinary. Small. Nothing like the towering, terrifying figures from my childhood memories. They didn't look at me as I passed. They were scanning the program, probably trying to figure out where their other daughter was sitting in the crowd. It hadn't occurred to them that those reserved seats were for me. The ceremony moved forward through the usual formalities, the welcome from the dean, an address from the university president, and remarks from the keynote speaker, a renowned surgeon. Then came the moment for the student address. And now, the dean said as he stepped up to the podium, it is my tremendous honor to introduce our valedictorian, the student selected to represent the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine class of 2026. She graduated at the top of her class, conducted groundbreaking research in pediatric oncology, and impressed every one of her professors with her compassion, intelligence, and dedication. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sarah Torres. The arena erupted in applause. I stood and walked toward the stage, my heart pounding. As I climbed the steps, I saw Rachel on her feet, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt, tears streaming down her face. I also saw my biological parents. They had gone completely still, staring down at their programs. My mother's hand was frozen halfway to her mouth. My father had gone pale. They had figured it out. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. 10,000 people were looking at me. I took a deep breath and began. Thank you, Dean Morrison. To our distinguished guests, faculty, families, and most importantly, my fellow graduates, congratulations. We made it. The applause swelled, then faded. When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, I continued. I remember sitting in a hospital room terrified wondering if I would live or die. I remember the doctor explaining treatment options, survival rates, and the long road ahead. And I remember the moment I realized I would have to walk that road alone. The arena fell silent. My biological parents made a choice that day, I said. They decided my life wasn't worth saving, that the cost of treatment was too high, that my sister's college education mattered more than my survival. They abandoned me in that hospital room and I never saw them again. I was 13 years old, bald from chemotherapy, terrified and alone. I could see my biological mother in the audience. She had gone completely white, her hand now pressed tightly over her mouth. My father stared down at his lap, refusing to look up. Around them people began to whisper, glancing in their direction. But I wasn't alone for long, I continued. Because a pediatric oncology nurse named Rachel Torres, I paused, looking directly at Rachel, who was openly sobbing now, saw a scared child who needed a family. She didn't just treat me as her patient. She brought me into her home. She held my hand through chemotherapy. She made me laugh when I wanted to give up. And she taught me that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about love. It's about believing in someone even when they don't yet believe in themselves. Rachel covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Rachel adopted me when I was 14, I continued. She worked double shifts to provide for me. She stayed up late helping me catch up on years of missed schoolwork. She told me I could be anything I wanted, do anything I dreamed of. When I said I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins, she said, "Then that's where you're going, and I'm with you every step of the way." The audience broke into applause. I waited for it to quiet. I beat cancer. I graduated high school with honors. I completed my undergraduate degree in 3 years. I excelled in medical school. And I'm going to be a pediatric oncologist, helping kids like the one I used to be. I took a breath. And I did all of that because one woman believed in me. One woman showed me what real love looks like. I reached up and removed my cap-breaking protocol, but I didn't care. This degree belongs to Rachel Torres. This accomplishment is hers as much as it is mine. She saved my life, not just from cancer but from believing I was worthless. She taught me that I deserve to take up space in this world. That I deserve to dream big. That I deserve to be loved. For the first time I looked directly at my biological parents. My mother was crying now, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of realization. My father still refused to look up. To my biological parents who are here today, I said, pausing long enough for the weight of that sentence to settle over the arena for everyone to understand exactly who I was talking about. Thank you for teaching me what not to be. Thank you for showing me that titles don't make a family. And thank you for giving me up so that I could find my real mother. The silence was deafening. And to Mom, I turned back to Rachel, who was standing now, one hand pressed to her heart. Thank you for every sacrifice. Thank you for every late night, every doctor's appointment, every tear you wiped away. Thank you for choosing me when no one else did. Thank you for being my mom. I smiled through my tears. You are the reason I'm standing here today. I love you. This is for you. The arena exploded, applause, cheers, people rising to their feet, the sound overwhelming. But I only watched Rachel crying so hard she could barely stand, supported by her friends. She mouthed, "I love you." I mouthed it back. Then I glanced at my biological parents. My mother sat frozen, her face a mask of horror and grief. My father had his head buried in his hands. Around them people had figured out who they were, and the looks they were receiving were not kind. They had come to watch the daughter they abandoned graduate. Instead, they were publicly revealed as the people who had valued money over their child's life. I finished my speech, the parts about medicine, our responsibility to patients, our oath to do no harm. But the real message had already been delivered. When I returned to my seat, my classmates stood and applauded. Several hugged me as I passed. The rest of the ceremony blurred together. The conferring of degrees, the turning of tassels, the recessional, none of it registered. All I could think about was getting to Rachel. After the ceremony, a reception was held in the adjacent hall. I was immediately surrounded by classmates, professors, and strangers congratulating me on my speech. Through the crowd, I spotted Rachel pushing her way toward me. When she finally reached me, we both broke down. We held each other in the middle of that packed room and cried, not caring who saw. "You didn't have to do that," Rachel sobbed. "You didn't have to give me the credit." "Yes, I did," I said, my voice shaking. "Because it's true. All of it. And I'm so proud of you. So proud." We were interrupted by Dean Morrison asking for photos, then by local news reporters who had heard about the speech and wanted interviews. Through all of it, Rachel stayed by my side, her hand never leaving mine. Across the hall, I caught sight of my biological parents one last time. They stood alone, no one approaching them, watching me from a distance. My mother looked like she wanted to come over but was too afraid. My father looked angry, his face flushed. Neither of them came closer. About 20 minutes later they left. I learned what happened next through a string of voicemails and emails over the following days. After abandoning me 15 years earlier, my parents had poured all their resources into my sister Jessica's education. She went to Yale, then law school. She landed a high-paying job at a corporate firm and married a wealthy investment banker. My parents lived off the financial support Jessica provided, having spent their own savings on her education and drained their retirement fund to help her buy a house. 6 months before my graduation, everything collapsed. Jessica's husband was caught in an insider trading scheme and sent to prison. Jessica lost her job in the fallout. Their house was seized. Suddenly broke and disgraced, Jessica could no longer support my parents. They came to my graduation hoping to reconnect, hoping the daughter they had abandoned had become successful enough to help them. They saw my name listed as valedictorian and thought it was their chance. Instead, they were publicly exposed in front of 10,000 people. My mother's first voicemail came that night. "Sarah, it's Mom. I know what you must think of us, but we were scared. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake. You're doing so well now and we're so proud of you. We thought maybe we need help. Jessica can't help us anymore and we're facing foreclosure. Since you're a doctor now, please call me back." I deleted it. 2 days later, my father emailed. "Sarah, your mother is devastated. You humiliated us in public. We made the best decision we could at the time given our circumstances. You turned out fine, so clearly we didn't ruin your life like you claimed. We're your parents. You owe us at least a conversation. Call us." I didn't respond. Over the next 2 weeks, they called 47 times. They sent emails, texts, and messages through social media. Every message was some combination of guilt-tripping entitlement and barely disguised requests for money. They'd heard that Johns Hopkins graduates land high-paying residencies. They knew I'd be making doctor money soon. They assumed I could help. On the 15th day, I sent one email. "You told me when I was 13 that you couldn't afford a sick child. You said Jessica had potential and I didn't. You abandoned me when I needed you most. Rachel Torres became my mother, my family, my everything. I owe you nothing. Do not contact me again." Then I blocked their numbers, blocked their emails, and moved on with my life. That was 3 years ago. I'm 31 now, completing my fellowship in pediatric oncology at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do. Rachel is still in Baltimore, still working as a nurse, though she's cut back to part-time. She visits often and I go home whenever I can. We talk every single day. She is my mom, my best friend, my hero. I heard through a distant acquaintance, someone who knew my biological family, that my parents lost their house 2 years ago. They're living in a small apartment now, surviving on Social Security. Jessica apparently moved across the country and stopped speaking to them after they kept asking her for money she didn't have. I feel nothing when I hear these updates. No satisfaction. No guilt. No sadness. They're strangers to me now. They made their choice 15 years ago. I made mine 3 years ago, standing at that graduation podium. Sometimes people ask if I regret the speech. If I think I was too harsh. If I ever wonder about reconciliation, I don't regret anything. That speech was never about revenge. It was about truth. It was about honoring the woman who saved me and showing the world what real love looks like. It was about letting every abandoned child watching know that they can survive, thrive, and succeed despite the people who gave up on them. Rachel taught me that family is chosen, not assigned. That love is action, not words. That showing up every single day matters more than sharing DNA. I'm Dr. Sarah Torres. I beat cancer. I became a doctor. I'm saving lives just like Dr. Patterson and Rachel once saved mine. And I did it all without the people who told me I wasn't worth saving. That isn't revenge. That's justice. If you're watching this and you've been abandoned, rejected, or told you weren't worth investing in, hear me clearly, those people are wrong. Your worth isn't defined by those who failed to see it. Your potential isn't limited by those who underestimated you. Find your Rachel. Find the people who see you, believe in you, and show up for you. Build your chosen family. Then prove every doubter wrong by becoming exactly who you're meant to be. I'm living proof that it's possible. And to Rachel, a mom, if you're watching this, thank you for everything. Always. I love you.